Good morning, and welcome to our 7th annual Ed Talks. I'm Katie Laser. I'm the Executive Director of EatDenver, independent. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Victor is the new head of my fan club, sitting front row. Thank you. Paid him to be there. It's really, really meaningful this morning to see everyone in person. Have to do a couple deep breaths up here. The last time we were here in this room was 2.5 years ago, and I'm looking around at everyone, and I'm just thinking about so many people in this room and beyond that have done extremely profound things for this restaurant community. And EatDenver has been around for 14 years, and we've always existed to improve the camaraderie in this restaurant industry and to pool best practices, pull the best from this group and help everyone move forward and just help this independent restaurant community keep developing stronger and more connected than ever. But in the last 2 years, we've all seen some really incredible magic happen with this group and beyond. So I'm looking around and I'm seeing people who have, shared their COVID mitigation plans, who have, offered to this group of 450 people to walk anyone through their questions about the Paycheck Protection Program, like giving out their cell phone. Everyone's trying to save their own businesses and still finding time to share what they've learned and support their peers in this business. And we've all had our own window into that, and mine was a pretty large window. Most of you were pretty head down in your teams, and I got to see, from up here, what everyone was up to and how they wanted to help and the questions that I was fielding. And the most significant questions I was hearing, from this community was how do we support our team members? And that came up in different forms and continues to since the week of St. Patrick's Day in 2020. But I just thought, I look back, does anyone ever lay in bed at night just looking at the listserv history? Or is that just me? I was doing that last night, and it was a really cool experience and pretty emotional to go back and look at the week of the first shutdown, March 16th, 17th, and leading up to that, and how the subject lines, the topics that everyone was asking about and offering took a immediate turn, and everyone was just, how can we help? What can we do for each other? But the most important thing, like I said before, is that everyone here was looking out for how do we help our people? And that came up in a million different ways, but I'm just so proud, for the last 2.5 years, or 2 years, you've made it so easy to fight for all of you and to very clearly articulate how important each of your businesses, all of your work is to Denver and beyond. And you gave me daily reminders of that at times, all day, every day. And it just, I feel like it was the most important work I've ever done and that EatDenver has ever done as an organization. So really, it was an extension of all of you. So I want to just start this off today by saying thank you for showing up for each other, and thank you for asking the right questions and for doubling down on your values throughout the last 2 years, and just making EatDenver and just in general the Denver area just a more connected, more tight-knit group of people that you can always call on. So I know we've all had our profound experiences over the last 2 years, but this was a milestone for me today to go through that exercise. So it's just really special to see all of you today, and thank you for being here. We have an exciting morning ahead of us. Thanks. So most of you know that we have a volunteer board of directors that is behind the scenes making all this magic happen. So in addition to everything that's been going on the last couple years, these 15 individuals have also been involved with how does EatDenver continue, and how do we, at this very pivotal moment for all of us, how do we make sure that EatDenver continues and is stronger coming out of this? So I just want to say a huge thank you to these individuals. Many of them are here, and if you are here, can you please stand up and just give a wave in case there are people here that haven't met you, and let's give them a huge thank you. Feel super lucky to work with this group, and I want to say an extra special thank you to Dana Falk-Query in the back in a beautiful black dress. She stepped into the EatDenver board president role a couple years ago now, and I just want to say a huge thank you for your leadership, your incredible consistency and creativity, and to know Dana Query is to know that anything is possible. So she has really helped steer this ship, and as you've all seen on the listserv and everywhere, that she's a driving force. So let's give a separate round of applause, and just thank you so much, Dana. You're amazing. Okay, next slide, please. And then to our sponsors who made this event possible and who are all just super eager to learn how they can support you, continued education, and this camaraderie that we have going in the Denver restaurant scene. First, thank you to the MSU School of Hospitality, to Jimmy and the whole team for hosting us again this year. Thank you so much for having us. To Pop Menu, DoorDash, Shamrock Foods, Calera, Tito's, they have a whole row here, VIP row, Ecolab, Open Table, Society Insurance, and New Belgium Brewing. Thank you all so much for your support and really helping make this event possible and keeping EatDenver supported as well. Thank you. Next slide. And to our, these are our annual industry allies. I'm new to EatDenver this year, and I just want to say some of these overlap, but just a huge moment of gratitude for these companies that really, back in December and January, decided that they really wanted to partner up with EatDenver this year and help us come out of the pandemic with a strong presence and programs. So these are our 9 industry allies for the year, and they'll be participating in most of our events this year. And thank you so much for the huge commitment. Okay, next slide. Let me give you a quick reminder of what's to come this morning. We're going to hear from 3 of our speakers first, and then we'll have a quick break to do our first ever Hospitality Heroes Awards. We're going to recognize 8 individuals from Denver area restaurants who are doing incredible work on the ground. And then we'll get back to the talks and finish with 2. 2 of our speakers were not able to join us today, and I wish they were in the same room as us. Andy Barish and Adrian Miller. They're both traveling this week, but pre-recorded talks for us. So while we will be strongly missing their presence, we are so excited that they were still able to make that happen. So on that note, it is just so great to see all of you and give so many hugs. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Sam, who's going to introduce our first speaker. Thanks.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Katie, for the awesome intro. I've never been so scared to stand in front of 250 people, of my peers, after watching the Oscars. So if I'm on a little bit of a defense, just give me some grace today, because it's very scary after this weekend. But first off, I'm Samantha. I work with Tito's Handmade Vodka. Thank you for all of the support. We really appreciate it. And I'm humbled and honored today to help introduce our first speaker. She is extremely well connected in Colorado. Most of you know her, many of you know her well. In 1977, she helped co-found the Westward, where she helped hire the very first food critic almost 40 years ago. And she still remains extremely integral into all food journalism. She's been involved on a national level and a local level with food journalism. Also very boldly and iconically, this is something I found really awesome, was she interviewed Bill Clinton in a pair of flip-flops. She's recognized and honored for numerous national awards for her columns and feature writings. So please help me welcome Patty Calhoun for her talk titled, "Don't Poison the Critic, the Care and Feeding of Food Journalists."
Okay, no slap and no flip-flops. I was supposed to go last, which was exciting because I thought I would just be able to make fun of everyone who'd gone before me. And now they get to make fun of me, and I'm going to have to go with this set speech, which will probably give them a lot of material. So my apologies, and especially as I used my glasses. Whoa. Okay. As I used my glasses like a garage door opener through this speech. Because seeing all of you is, first of all, great, and it reminds me of so many humiliations in my life that I will probably need to share with you, and those aren't yet in the script. We go to restaurants for so much more than a meal. We hunger for more than food. Sometimes we want an adventure, sometimes we crave comfort. Sometimes we just want to go to a place that feels more like home than our own home, where I just found some eggs that were a year old, by the way. And thank you, Los Dos Patrios, one of my homes away from home. To flip that over, food journalism is about so much more than restaurant reviews. While thinking about this talk, I went with some restaurant pals to a very old bar on South Broadway, the kind of place you've probably been driving by for decades. I once asked a friend who'd grown up in Littleton and whose father was the sheriff what was the worst bar in Littleton, and he told me to go there, but he'd never been there. As it turned out, the Castle was a really great spot, if you've been there. Great burgers, good camaraderie, and we sat around and talked about the talk and restaurants and whether the new guy on Bridgerton is hot and whether you should darn socks. And it was exactly what you want from some nights at a restaurant. The Castle is a place you want to read about, you want to know about, but maybe it's not a place that cries out for a review, even if its burgers are great. And last night, after I thought I'd finished this talk to go last, I had an impromptu dinner at the Ponte, the new restaurant at the Denver Art Museum. And looking across the rain-swept city, I felt like Denver was going on a new adventure. Downtown Denver is not dead, by the way. No matter what talk show hosts and headlines might say, I've been eating and drinking my way around downtown for 2 years. And it's ready for people to go out again. It feels like a place to explore. And while most people have read about the Ponte, and we've written about the Ponte, I think now maybe there's more that people should know. They maybe should even read a restaurant review when we're ready for those again. Like everything else, the world of, just checking to see if I have my pages in order, sorry. Like everything else, the world of food journalism has been upended over the last 2 years. Unlike some places, it was already changing drastically before the pandemic. When we started Westward over 40 years ago, a big night on the town was to go to the broker to get a steak and that free bowl of horrible shrimp. Or you could try one of those newfangled fern bars like Zach's, and occasionally we'd go to the Saucy Noodle, where my original partner had worked, because he loved the fried ravioli named after Maury Amsterdam. Despite the lack of really groundbreaking restaurants, the city was lousy with highfalutin restaurant reviewers who always sounded too big for their britches, and often were. The rest of Denver's food coverage consisted mainly of service pieces and recipes in those big Wednesday food sections in the dailies. Bill St. John, if you're here, I know you remember when the Denver Post ran the Helen Dolligan recipe for the apricot chicken that wound up exploding in ovens across Denver because there was too much brandy in the recipe. It was a great journalistic moment. The Post had to replace several ovens. In the early days, our food coverage focused on restaurant reviews, like most, and the occasional mockery of Casa Bonita. We've had a series of food reviewers over the past 4 decades, some more successful than others, all people, I hope, with high ethical standards. One was bulimic before we knew the realities of the disease, and I had to go with her to her meals so she would leave the restaurant before she enjoyed it a second time. Another was the beloved John Kessler, a recent transplant to Denver, who'd never written a restaurant review until he submitted a sample to us. And it was a revelation of what a good restaurant review could be. A lot of history about the kind of food, great descriptions of Colfax. If you can't do a great description of Colfax, you're in trouble. And a really smart assessment of the actual meal. I'd hired him by the first page, and you've heard from him here. Was he the first one? First Ed Talk? Another was Kyle Wagner, who was notoriously allergic to dill. And a jar of the stuff was delivered to the office by John Imbergamo, who's not here, after a negative but completely fair review. Another negative review of a steakhouse where she went with the legendary Barry Fay prompted a call from a certain restaurant trade association official, who I don't think is here, who said the owner of their steakhouse was complaining that Fay's son managed the restaurant, so it was unfair to do the review. Fay's son was 6 years old at the time. But here's a sign of how much the scene has changed. When Kyle was working on our Best of Denver issue 14 years ago, she could come up with only one restaurant that had opened that year that would qualify as a new best restaurant, and it didn't even have a kitchen. Now the restaurant scene after that started exploding like Helen Dolligan's apricot chicken. And right at the start of that, our restaurant critic was Jason Sheehan, a person people love to hate. He once inspired a late-night email from a restaurateur whose name might be Dave Query, which was almost as long as the Sheehan review and even more profane, if possible. Sheehan also wants the whole myth of the being anonymous as a food critic. We tried really hard to maintain that. Sheehan charged a beer when I was meeting him at Vesta Dipping Grill for a secret meeting, and Josh Woken, bless your heart, you didn't bust me when I kept introducing him as my cousin or something. Anyway, yeah, reviewers are not always smart. But Sheehan came at a time when restaurant reviewing, what food journalism was really changing. Anthony Bourdain was writing, as you know if you've read Sheehan. Cable news was filling up with food shows that were not just about French cooking. New culinary magazines were emerging. Food journalism now consisted of much more than pompous reviews and Wednesday recipes. It was entertainment, it was culture, it was rock and roll. It could be everything. Sheehan doubled our audience for food stories, mirroring audience growth around the country. The web provided more space for food writing, and reviews moved to a less prominent role. We wrote about openings, closing, food events, food feuds. The annual Best of Lists spawned weekly Best of Lists. People were hungry to know more, and we kept feeding them. There were still plenty of food writers fighting to be the first to get a story, and in some cases, holding restaurateurs and their PR people hostage, and I know some of you are here. At one point, we actually had a summit of food writers to talk about it and to ramp down on the so-called exclusives. If you solve a murder, you can put exclusive in a headline. If you're revealing an ongoing pattern of sexual harassment in a kitchen, and those stories were becoming all too common, you can put exclusive in a headline. If you browbeat a restaurateur into letting you break the story that he's opening a second location of a not good restaurant, you should not. Restaurateurs have a choice. They have some power in who they want to break a story. They do not have a choice of lying to others on the trail. A simple no comment will do, but it might ruffle some feathers. And we all know who has lied to us, but that's part of the deal. And here's a quick pro tip. I'm not saying sucking up doesn't work to the media. Restaurateurs who let food writers know they enjoyed a story that had nothing to do with their own business are just being smart. Even smarter is to tip a food writer off to a good story that has nothing to do with you. That wins you a lot more points than sending a basket of payola, especially since many newsrooms won't accept that if the newsrooms exist at all. Because the heated competition of the last decade has been drastically reduced. The gutting of newsrooms across the nation hit food reporting too. And then the pandemic, which further cut the ranks of journalists at a time when an industry needed them more than ever. What the restaurant industry doesn't need our reviews of whether a kitchen packaged its to-go offerings in a pleasant way. Right now it needs stories about restaurant relief, about the mental health of workers, about the historic lack of attention to restaurateurs of color, and inspirational stories about the businesses that were able to survive and how. Now as we head into the new normal, and Casa Bonita is suddenly not just the biggest story in this, is the biggest story in the city, not just a food story, is there still a seat at the table for criticism? Perhaps not for Casa Bonita, even though Dana Rodriguez has promised us that the food will be palatable. But what fun is that going to be? Westward hasn't had a restaurant critic since before the pandemic, and I'm not sure we ever will again. We would have to find the right person, and that's not easy. We cover the restaurant scene, of course. We publish three or so stories a day, thank you, Molly. And right before I came in here, I was editing a story about a new restaurant that opened in Park Hill, one that lets readers know why it opened so quickly, what they might want to order there. It's not a time to do a full-fledged review of that place, and the old rule of waiting a few months and eating a few meals should still hold. But in these days of supply chain problems and short staffing, what amounts to a fair review? In the old days, if the service sucked on a few consecutive meals, a critic felt comfortable calling out the restaurant. In these new days, that no longer feels fair. At the very least, you need to call the restaurant to find out why. Did everyone call in sick? And if that favorite dish didn't taste the same, was it because the ingredients weren't available? But still, as I sat at the Ponte last night, I wondered what a great reviewer, someone who knows a lot more about food than I, would make of our meal. I wanted to know why Lebna tastes so good. Hell, I want to know how to pronounce it. I'm in the middle of judging the James Beard Awards for restaurant reviewers, and I know that even through the pandemic, some managed to do it well. Many did not. There's room at the table for a reviewer, but the reviewer has to bring something to the table. While you can't just blame Yelp, although it's really fun, and you can blame Yelp a lot for the destruction of criticism's reputation, you can't just blame Yelp. Yelp has made everyone think they can be a reviewer, and that's not the case. My fish was grilled to perfection, our waiter was a loser, this place sucks, blah, blah, blah. I feel for every one of you who has to chase down the damage done by Yelp. And of course, the damage we might do, but that's a different thing. But there's good news. Just as the internet has made it easy to spread rumors and untruths, it's also given you power with food journalists. In fact, you can survive without getting any review at all, much less a good one, or even just a story on that new deck you built, that new dish you've added. The web has given you the power to get the word out. You can send out an email blast, you can Facebook the news, you can put the new deck and dish on Instagram. And yes, you can still feed the media with the standard press release and photo via the web, or dish them up a good story. But if that story doesn't show up, or if you don't like the headline, please hold the dill.
Hey, y'all. Before we jump in, I think last night I went to bed stressed. And I think, like many of you in this room, the last 2 years, we've gone to bed stressed. Waking up today, though, I think I'm going to leave here with something that I haven't had in a long time, which is a lot of hope. And over the last couple of years, everything that EatDenver has done for each other is incredible. And it just couldn't be more awesome to be together right now. And I hope you guys all feel the same way I do, because this is the most special industry in the most incredible town. And I couldn't be more thankful to be a part of it. That being said, Andy Barish, I wish he was here with us today. He is someone that embraces everything that's so important to EatDenver. Community, valuing time, being there for each other when you need each other the most. And over the last couple years, I've had the opportunity to meet this legend, Andy Barish. Andy is the managing director at Jefferies. Jefferies is a global investment bank. He is the director of restaurant equity research and has been a leader of Jefferies' restaurant efforts for over the last 11 years. Previously, he was with Cohen & Company, where he managed an investment bank. He has devoted his entire career to hospitality. Constantly on the road, traveling and trying every restaurant and looking for the next incredible experience for the same reason we all are, to just experience that pure moment of joy. Andy is always willing to make time, and he's always looking for a way to support the industry and the amazing people that make it up. And he has just done so much for the state of Colorado and Denver. Today, Andy is going to talk about something more important than anything else in our business. He's always had an amazing perspective of valuing labor as an investment. And investing in your team is by far the most important thing we can do for so many important reasons. But I'm really going to let him share that. So today I'm going to pass it off to the virtual Andy Barish and his message on culture, understanding the importance of human capital.
Thanks to Ed's Katie Laser and Peter Newland for getting me involved today. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you live. I have a dear place in my heart for Denver and Colorado. In fact, as you're watching this, I'm enjoying skiing in Beaver Creek on a family vacation. And thank goodness the March snow gods were cooperating once again. Hope there's going to be nice spring and summer runoff and hopefully a quiet fire season to come. So I jumped at this opportunity to do the Ed Talk given my connections to Denver. I'm a 1985 Cherry Creek High School grad, go Bruins, and I've watched the Denver restaurant scene grow and flourish with such talent, creativity, and diversity that I've told many people about how it matches or even exceeds my current hometown of San Francisco, but also my upcoming change in residence to Boston, which I believe with Denver are two of the youngest major cities in the country. So what is a financial analyst from an investment bank doing here where most of the time I'm evaluating financial statements and stocks of large public restaurant chains such as McDonald's, Starbucks, and Chipotle? Well, let me put it this way. I've always been intrigued by that special sauce when I walk into a restaurant. And having done this for a pretty long time, it's easy to tell how quickly a great experience will be or how meh that experience will be from the moment I walk in the door just because of that first interaction with a person. Frankly, human capital has always been so important in this industry, but even more so now given the Great Resignation and the challenges of keeping people in this great industry. I've always been a believer that treating your human capital or your labor cost as an investment, not purely a cost, will allow for better retention and attracting new partners, which allows for a more consistent guest experience, higher guest loyalty, and the proverbial flywheel, which leads to higher sales and profits. Purpose with your team and profits are not mutually exclusive. In fact, I believe they create more value over time. So how do you get there and really get brand apostles internally for your team so they can start spreading the word externally to the consumer? Well, it starts with culture. But what is culture? As Herb Kelleher, the much-quoted founder of Southwest Airlines, has said, it's the things you do when no one is looking. More formally, we conducted a survey that looked at the top 3 values about culture, and they are respect, teamwork, and appreciation. EY, a professional services firm, defines it as the unwritten rules that set expectations about how people decide and behave, reflected in what people actually do every day, what is celebrated, emphasized, and sometimes overlooked. By measuring the human capital of your restaurant company and analyzing employee satisfaction, engagement, productivity, health and safety, while also taking into account the influences from management, consumers, and the industry as a whole, I believe you as founders, operators, and team members can come to conclusions on a company's culture and ultimately arrive at more sensible decisions to drive it going forward. Where to start? It usually begins with values and a mission. So if you have cultural values that align with the values of your employees, I believe it will improve both employee retention and talent recruitment. It is important for everyone to know what values the management of a company believes resembles its culture, but also evaluate how aligned these are, and most importantly, how tied they are to the employees. Based on surveys we've done internally, this analysis shows a dispersion actually between what matters most to employees versus what a company presents as its core values. Again, I can tell you from the research and survey work done internally by our ESG team that the three values that matter the most in a services industry like restaurants are respect, appreciation, and opportunity, with fourth place coming in close as teamwork. As Noodles, a Colorado-based company, has defined its values, it's pretty simply, we care, we show pride, we're passionate, and we love life. And I thought it was also helpful to go through the values and mission of Upward Projects. This is a smaller female-led restaurant groupie that started in the Phoenix market and is now growing its Postino wine bar concept across communities around the country. Lauren Bailey, the founder and CEO, puts it this way: values connect everyone, and diversity is key. But here are 5 key examples. Be authentic and humble, act with integrity, bring good energy, get extraordinary results, and win as a team. This kind of flows into Upward Project's culture, which is defined as we're a team of innovators, collaborators, and adventurers with a hunger to lift up those around us. A sprinkle of fun goes into pretty much everything we do, but don't let that fool you. We swing hard every day with an eye to win. And again, even more distilled down is the mission: creating spaces where friends eat, drink, and feel good. In general, just making people feel good and welcome. For formerly Denver-based and founded Chipotle, Steve L's vision was to cultivate a better world. And this has come through in many different ways of being real, which defines the company's values to this day, even with close to 3,000 restaurants. Being real encompasses ingredients, sourcing, food, fighting for the planet, and treating people right by providing real culinary training, career opportunities, and great benefits. Of course, this has had to change over time as the brand has become the behemoth that it is. But as a people-first company rooted in values, the purpose of creating a better world extends beyond serving good food with real ingredients. It means hiring world-class individuals and being dedicated to investing in their future and partnering together to positively impact the communities they serve. Most notably, it means fostering a culture that champions diversity, ensures equity, and celebrates inclusion. Another example, which you'll see in the Denver market in Dutch Bros drive-through coffee chains, are values such as customer stoke, growth and opportunity, doing the right thing. It's never been about the money, DEI, and getting it done while having fun doing it. This has created a great culture that attracts really terrific team members and is summarized in the mission of committing to make a massive difference one cup at a time. Of course, all these can take a lot of different directions, but we wanted to stay focused on how you can attract and retain team members and share these values, given this is probably the largest challenge facing restaurants today. First of all, on the items we listed earlier, respect. We believe that a sign that a company respects and appreciates employees in the last 2 years of COVID is the prioritization of employee physical and mental health and safety over company performance. Both these areas have clearly been to the forefront in the past 2 years of the pandemic, and the fact that many restaurant industry workers are frontline, so to speak, with frequent customer contact. In fact, this is an area that is, although unfounded broadly, brought a lot of attention to the unionization efforts against Starbucks. Now, Starbucks is arguably one of the most progressive employers in the restaurant industry over its 50-year history, but it's still charged with bringing about more change and benefits to its employees. Interestingly, our survey results show that younger employees do feel more respected, but also on the other side, don't feel as if their safety in the past 2 years has been prioritized versus performance. Again, this is broadly speaking, as I look at the restaurant industry as having done an amazing job in protecting workers as much as they can. I think we all know what happens in a toxic or uncivil work environment. And inversely, as the Journal of Applied Psychology describes, When employees feel grateful at work, they are motivated to contribute to the welfare of others, and therefore less likely to put down coworkers, criticize them, or exclude them. In other words, because incivility and gossip harm others' well-being, gratitude should decrease interpersonal mistreatment through its effects on pro-social motivation. The next subject in values that came up in our survey was appreciation, which comes in many different forms beyond just dollars, although that is clearly an element that matters very much, as it is number 2 in our survey behind benefits, where there are additional things to do just beyond health insurance that can really focus on increasing appreciation among your team members and increase motivation and retention. Increased benefits appear to be more table stakes right now. So what have we discovered are the givens? Mental health counseling, college assistance, PTO vacation time, and parental leave seem to be some of the areas that many large restaurant companies are leaning into and possibly for you to consider. Finally, on opportunity, this is an area where we view workforce training, the process for promotions and bonuses, as well as the opportunity for internal mobility as the key to a successful culture and attracting high-quality people. From our survey results, we can infer that younger full-time employees value workforce training more than older employees. Dutch Bros, using them as another example, first of all hires great team members who are called broistas instead of baristas, and then trains and nurtures them as they enter the pathway to leadership, eventually becoming regional operators after a couple of years, 100% of whom have started at the broista level and can wind up supporting 3 or more locations at a time. The brand initially looks for attitude in its hiring, which encompasses qualities like personality, positivity, approachability, and individuality. And this is best summed up by sharing the Dutch love. So in wrapping, it's okay to create a cult around your culture. Just make sure it's a good one that reinforces your core values and beliefs and allows for growth and diversity of views. We all know that you need to generate a profit also to continue to grow, hire, and promote your business, and we think these strategies can help create value. You want a cult-like following for your restaurant brand or image, so it should start from within. Good luck finding those great team members out there, and thanks for your time.
I'm Kristen Rao. I'm the Marketing and Partnerships Coordinator at EatDenver. If you're a member, you know me from spamming your inbox. I send a lot of emails. I also feel like a walking coffee cup right now, so if I speak really fast, sorry about that. Buenos Aires is known for its elegant architecture, for tango, and for its nightlife. But in Denver, it's also known as the inspiration behind Maria Empanada, and for being the birthplace of its founder and CEO, Lorena Cantarovici. Lorena is from Argentina. She moved to the US with $300, her flamenco shoes, and a backpack full of dreams. In 2010, she started making empanadas out of her garage and got her first break when a caterer tried them at a party and made an order for 10 dozen. Fast forward to 2022, and Maria Empanada has expanded to 3 locations with 3 more on the way, all of which still craft handmade empanadas. Lorena has won the U.S. Small Business Administration's Small Business Person of the Year Award, and recently Maria Empanada was host to Vice President Kamala Harris on her American Rescue Plan tour. Maria Empanada's location on South Broadway also boasts an espresso machine that's blessed by Pope Benedict, which, after Lorena, is the coolest thing on South Broadway. Please join me in welcoming Lorena for her speech, Connecting the Dots. Hint, we are the dots.
I'm short. My son is taking a speech class in high school. On his homework, there is a quote from President John F. Kennedy that it says, "The only reason to give a speech is to change the world." I thought, wow, isn't that talking coming? So I need to get prepared. So let's see how this goes. Have you ever been in a big city where there are these guys selling fake purses or watches, and when they see some police, they just grab everything and start running? Well, that used to be me and my mom. But instead of cool purses that I probably could keep, it was just electrical supplies, like connectors, like outlets, like light bulbs. It was a very bad and difficult life in Buenos Aires for me and for my mom for a long time. I just started out as a banker in Buenos Aires, and I was one who brought the small but stable salary monthly to my house. But it was not good, it was not enough. So we were always on the edge of homelessness. My mom couldn't get a job, so she did whatever she could. And at this point in her life, she got into buying these cheap electrical supplies. So she started going to a park. She was going to a park where a lot of other people were trying to sell things, just to survive. I remember that after my work at bank, I went in the dark to help my mom, to support her, and to grab everything and go back home. We were not selling anything attractive, so no one was getting close to our table. But my mom, with her magic, found a way to attract and bring some sales. So you could hear her, if you were passing around, you could hear her saying, "Hey, it's nice outside, right? You need a cord extension and you can put the TV on the balcony." So she found those kind of attractive ways to connect with people and ways to get us closer to a possible sale. That was exactly what we needed. She showed me that a positive attitude and always transmitting buena onda, good energy, can connect us to joy. So buena onda, it is good energy, and it's the main focus that we have at Maria Empanada. Buena onda means good vibe. We talk about it all the time. We live with it, with each other, with our guests, with our vendors, with anyone who comes in contact with us. I'm sure that at the dining room of all of your restaurants, it's easy to distinguish or to point when something is bad. It's easy to see when nobody turned on the TV, or maybe when the tables are dirty. So with energy, it's exactly the same. With energy, you can tell when someone has a good energy, and it's even more obvious when someone brings the negative energy, or mala onda. So how can we attract and give buena onda when it's not there? We, all of us, are fields of energy, we know that. We receive and give energy like waves. And those waves connect to other energies, and they can be good or bad depending on the moment in our lives. So since the last 2 years, like we all are talking about here, we have been navigating an ocean of difficulties, or mala onda, on a huge scale. These are not waves, these are tsunamis or mala onda. And it makes it so hard to be positive or to smile in front of all these circumstances. A pandemic, political divisions, racism, climate change, and now a war. It is hard to turn on the TV and watch news, but it's all real, and we have to deal with it. I want to tell you something that I learned during the pandemic. But before I do that, I need to put the scenario in this. So let me give you a little bit of a background about how Argentinians are. The way we greet people is with a kiss, with a hug, or a little touch in the shoulder. So if you go to a doctor appointment in Argentina, be prepared, because the doctor may kiss you. Honestly, we are weird. So for me, when I go to a location, I need to plan to arrive early if I have a meeting. That is absolutely mission impossible. Something else to know about Argentinians, that we are always late, always. But the problem here is that it takes me a minimum of 10 minutes to get to the table of my meeting, because I have to say hi to everyone individually, and I do need to do an eye contact. I do this because it's in my culture, and also because it's good for me, and it is who I am. And because it is a connection point that I have been institutionalizing at Maria Empanada since the beginning. The benefit of greeting people this way is that we can sense how things are with the other person, and this is the way we give and receive energy. And I'm proud to say that each member of my team has adopted this in their own way. So with that as a background, let me share with you what I learned during the pandemic. One day, I came into my Broadway shop and I saw the enemy in front of me, because that little one is me. In fact, I saw my enemy everywhere. I was surrounded by it. It was so scary, and I thought I would have a panic attack. It was the plexiglass. I don't want even a picture of the plexiglass. The plexiglass started to be on top of our displays, by our POS, and I started seeing it everywhere. This thing was a transparent wall blocking the transmission of energies. Exactly the opposite of all my intentions. It was blocking humanity, and I started to shake. Another thing about Argentinians is that we super exaggerate. But the plexiglass became a metaphor of our lives. So let me show you how I felt in 2020 and 2021. But the reality is that we don't need a pandemic to see that there are big invisible barriers around us all the time. We are always confronted obstacles, big or small, that we need to address or eliminate. A plexiglass can appear even if you just think differently from somebody else. Boom, a plexiglass. My world, my life, my way of thinking. So how do we reconnect again? How do we unzoom? We start with the simple things. Close your computer, turn off your phone, look in the eyes. You are in a meeting with someone, and you need to respect. We talk about respect just in the presentation before. Go and get a cup of coffee with a colleague. Go invite a friend. Connection means bonding. Connection means recognition, validation, appreciation. When real connections happen, people become more vulnerable, and it is powerful, so powerful that souls open up and it brings possibilities. I like to believe that my company, Maria Empanada, is a company of possibilities. And let me give you some examples of that. The most important thing we look for a new employee when we hire someone is whether they can make an eye contact or a smile in the conversation. Everything else we can teach. We listen when an employee is ready for more, and then we act. We have several stories of internal growth, and we love to celebrate them. A team member that started as a dishwasher now is a manager at one of my locations. A prep cook now is in charge of our dough production, and this is an unusually important job for us. We value employees for their attitude over their education level. Their attitude is worth more than the diploma. It is satisfying to see how they grow in a company and become leaders. Some of them never work with an Excel spreadsheet or analyze a P&L, but they do it now. And they feel important because they are. We love to surprise our employees. The last time was with mariachis. And many times we do it for no reason at all. We just like to do it because we all celebrate and we all have fun. Imagine an employee going to their home and saying, hey, I got surprised by mariachis today at my job. Isn't that cool? We provide English classes for team members, including me. But I teach a pronunciation class. Just kidding. We start our weekly meetings by going around, and each person has to give their buena onda for the week. This is a good way to set the tone, even if we had to discuss tough issues. We make more phone calls than texts or emails because you can hear, you can sense more feelings in the other side. We try to be more humans than before, being more aware of moments of sharing. This includes happy hours as a team after certain meetings. It can be hard work to do all these things or paying attention to all this, but believe me, it's worth it. This investment of time and effort has made our employees very loyal, and they are some of the best ambassadors of our brands. So my theme is very simple and doesn't need any deep analysis. Go and connect with a smile, with eye contact, and be present with our people. Because this is good for us, and it's good for whoever you are with. And that is because that is the way how we generate buena onda. If we keep with the analogy of us being in that little bag or being behind our plexiglass, I really believe that as we move closer to one another, those bags will pop or the plexiglass will completely disappear. And we will be free. So to all my colleagues and to President Kennedy, I really think that my mom was right. If we all make an effort to have a good attitude and transmit good vibes, even in an ocean of challenges, we can connect to joy, and that's the way we can change the world. So muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Lorena, and what a way to kick off the talks. Next, we have a couple things coming up. I'm super excited to introduce you to a new company to Denver. If you haven't heard of Calera yet, you probably did when you walked in and got a little goodie bag from them. They're a new massive hydroponic vertical farm here right outside of Denver, and Kristen and I are getting ready to go check it out in a couple weeks here, and we thought Ed Talks would be a perfect time to tell you about it and get you acquainted with them and welcome them to Denver. We're gonna watch a quick video introduction on Calera, and then I'll be back for Hospitality Heroes.
That just-picked sound of crisp, fresh greens. So good, so healthy. And now, thanks to highly advanced agricultural science from Calera, so readily available. At Calera, we're solving the challenges of feeding a growing global population with sophisticated hydroponic farms that can be built anywhere to bring farm-to-table freshness wherever people live. In highly controlled vertical farm environments, greens are nurtured with the precise amounts of nutrients, light, water, and humidity. Advanced technology continuously and constantly maintains optimal growth, but also makes adjustments to speed harvesting and increase nutritional values. Greens grown this way need less space, use less water, and are cleaner and safer than organics because there are no pesticides, no chemicals, no genetic modification, and they're never exposed to pathogens. And picked close to where people live, they're fresh, longer, all year round. That's the science of great greens.
And speaking of food, perfect opportunity. Wanted to say a huge thanks to Rosenberg's for providing us breakfast this morning, as well as Tito's and Dasbog and MSU. Thank you. Okay, next up, I'm super excited about this recognition. We've been talking about how do we recognize some of the unsung heroes in the Denver area's hospitality community. And we were talking with our partners at DoorDash, and they were actually able to, through their community credits program, provide a prize that really put some excitement around this. And so a few weeks ago, we did a call for nominations to members. And we just really enjoyed reading through all of your recommendations and getting to know some bartenders, cooks, servers, all kinds of folks working on the ground in your restaurants that we don't get to meet very often through EatDenver. So it was a really cool opportunity to learn about some of your team members. And we selected 8 hospitality heroes for our inaugural award recognition. And each of them will get $1,000 in DoorDash credit, and then they'll get some continuous embarrassment from EatDenver, and I'm sure whoever nominated them. But how we're gonna do this today, since I don't believe that we have any of the award winners here, but I really wanna spend this time recognizing them today, and then I'll go through them and introduce you all to them up here on the slides. And then if you could just hold your applause, and we'll send them a clip of the video too, so we'll give them a huge, embarrassing round of applause and recognition. And even though they're not here, they'll still feel it. Okay, first off, many of you probably recognize him from Super Mega Bien. Jordan Williams is a bartender down at Super Mega. Eric and I love this because Eric from Alloy Modern, a different restaurant and another member restaurant, recommended him. He says, Jordan embodies hospitality both at work and at his home, wherever he is. People are laughing and eating well. Jose Luis Padilla, he's a dishwasher at Frasca Food and Wine. And Rose, who nominated him, says, Jose Luis is a caring and reliable team member. He's a leader among his peers and does an excellent job. Danny Gojin, lead expo host takeout at Steuben's. And Josh Wolkan nominated Danny, and he says, Danny's contribution, loyalty, leadership, and ownership are invaluable, and she has helped bring memorable experiences to millions of happy guests over the years. Next up is Nicholas Spafford. He is a volunteer coordinator and kitchen staff at Cafe 180. Sarah, the executive director over there at Cafe 180, nominated him and says, Cafe 180 serves a wide variety of people, and Nicholas treats everyone with the same warm welcome, nourishing food, and caring community. He is quick to ask about a person's story and cares about the answer. Ashley Vigil, she's a server at Altrea. Robert nominated her and says, I know if she's on my shift, it will be a good one, not just because of her attitude, but for her ability to turn the ship around and lead everyone to a great experience. Oscar Meyer Carrillo. He is the sous chef at Brider. Chase nominated Oscar and says, he is a positive guiding force in a time that's not always easy to stay positive. He makes work a better place to be. Next up is Jonathan Modine, I believe, server at Garden Grace. Jeff nominated Jonathan and says, the most genuinely altruistic hospitality professional I have ever worked with, which says a lot. Constantly makes people feel special and endures a memorable experience for the guest every single time. Next up is Brandon Maynard, front of house at Chook Charcoal Kitchen. Chip nominated Brandon and says, as much time and effort that he dedicates to the guest, he doubles when it comes to his team members. He goes above and beyond in every task he takes on and embodies the meaning of hospitality. Okay, I lost track, but that's 8, right? Okay, let's give it up for those 8 hospitality heroes. Rest assured, we will be embarrassing them at their place of work. Thank you all so much for nominating, and we're excited to keep that recognition going as well. And thank you to DoorDash through their DoorDash Community Credits program for donating $1,000 per hospitality hero. Okay, and while I'm up here, the next person that's gonna trade spaces with me is Sarah Abel. She is a member of our board of directors, and she's the chair of our member programs committee as well. If you don't know Sarah yet, she is a force to be reckoned with, always the coolest dressed in the room. If she isn't already up here. Definitely take a look at her boots on the way in. Can we get a... And I just want to say a huge thank you to Sarah for all the work she does for EatDenver behind the scenes. And if you haven't met her yet, please introduce yourself to her. So please welcome Sarah up here, who's going to introduce us to Adrian. Woo!
Can you all hear me? Have you met Katie Laser, my publicist? As she mentioned, I'm Sarah Abel, and I am a relatively new EatDenver board member. I joined, I think, right at the beginning of the pandemic. I'm also a partner at Baltz & Company, and so happy to see the lower half of everybody's face in this room. Katie, I just want to say a huge thank you to you for shepherding EatDenver, as well as my fellow board members. Everybody in this room for your grit, your hustle, your determination. The last couple years have been challenging. The restaurant industry is always challenging, but I echo Peter in saying how grateful I am for this community, and even more grateful to be a part of this community. It's truly the best. The restaurant industry is amazing, so thank you all for being here as well. Now, down to business. Most people work and grind their whole lives for just one title, but our next speaker is a really big deal. Sorry, I wish John was here for the herbaceous roast. I couldn't pass it up. Adrian is a brilliant, funny, and fabulous multi-hyphenate. He's a big screen star. If you haven't seen High on the Hog, I suggest you run, don't walk. He is a James Beard Foundation award-winning author, a certified barbecue judge, which maybe is the coolest title ever, an attorney, a presidential advisor. He was the special assistant to President Clinton's Initiative for One America, the first freestanding office in the White House, devoted to addressing issues of racial, religious, and ethnic reconciliation. And whoever had 2 Clinton mentions on their bingo card wins today. He is a brilliant coiner of phrases. He is a badass thrift shopper. He is a public servant. He is the soul food scholar, and he's also a dear friend. He's the author of 3 books, Soul Food, which earned him Beard Foundation Award, The President's Kitchen Cabinet, which was a finalist for the 2018 NAACP Image Award for Best Literary Nonfiction, as well as the 2018 Colorado Book Award for History, and most recently, Black Smoke, African Americans in the United States of Barbecue. We are so lucky to have this gem of a human in our own community as well as in our backyard. And while he's currently en route to a speaking engagement in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I am honored and delighted to introduce his, and to borrow his phrase, slammin', virtual Ed Talk. So Adrian, kick some ass out there in Tennessee, and without further ado, his Ed Talk. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Adrian Miller, the Soul Food Scholar. My tagline is dropping knowledge like hot biscuits, and it is my honor and privilege to talk to you about the subject, leading with a mouthful. Now, this is going to be kind of different because I am going to, in a way, brainstorm with you and share some ideas on how the hospitality industry can be leaders in essentially bringing our country together. We see all the headlines about how fractured we are, but I truly believe, pun intended, that there's a hunger for community and for connection. And in our society, there are fewer and fewer places where people from different walks of life can come together. And the hospitality space is one of those few places left. So I've been thinking a lot about how hospitality industry folks can be leaders. And here's some of the ideas that I've been thinking about. And first of all, we have to think about hospitality spaces, our restaurants, our hotels, wherever, in 3 ways. In some of these ways, people have thought about them, and it may not be obvious, but one is that these are places where people connect, where people build community. The other is that we can think of hospitality spaces as places of learning. And then lastly, that we can think of these places as places of healing. So it's about building community, better understanding, and healing the divides that we have. So the first idea that I have is essentially, and I'm going to talk mostly through the lens of race because that's where I've been doing the most thinking about this, but understand that these ideas can be applied to any concept. Whatever divide you see. The other one I've been thinking about a lot is the urban-rural divide. And so this concept can be applied to a number of spaces. But the first one is, how can the hospitality industry engage Black creatives and support them? In the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of ideas floated around about, and a real sense of affirming Black creatives. And so one thing I thought is that those in the hospitality space, especially those who have a following, can introduce Black creatives to your followers. So this can easily be done through social media, having a takeover of social media, and highlighting maybe Black creatives could be one way to do that. Following them, supporting them, liking their content, retweeting it, sharing with others. That does so much to help Black creatives in this space. So think about that. And let me just say this and make this very clear. You do not have to wait to Black History Month or Juneteenth to do these things. You can do these throughout the years. And one of the things I think is really important is that we send a message to people that this is not a special effort, right? This is part of the fabric of our community. This is something that we should do. And I think that would be very, very important. Another thing we could do, and an idea I've been thinking about is, for restaurants especially, is to culturally source on your menus. Now, our menus have done a lot to educate diners, and diners are very interested in the backstory, right? So now when you go to a restaurant, you can get not only the place where the animal was raised or where the vegetables were raised, you can learn their personal habits, hobbies, the things they love. So why not culturally source? And by culturally source, I mean that if you are featuring some dish on your menu that have ingredients from another part of the world, or it's a composed dish from another culture, why not let your diner know that? If you have okra on the menu, just say, hey, okra is from West Africa. And if there's not enough real estate on your menu to do this, certainly the server can do it as well. And I'll give you one of my, let me give you a dramatic example. Nashville hot chicken. All right. So Nashville hot chicken, for those who don't know, was born of a Black restaurant in Nashville. So the story goes is that Thornton Prince, got crosswise with the woman in his life who was a great cook. She decided to make his special dish, his favorite dish, fried chicken. And she made a super spicy version of it to burn his mouth out, and wishing ill upon him to, get him for his cheating on her. He ends up loving it. And then that tradition gets started. So it's clearly within African-American culture, and it's a great story. So when I go to restaurants and I see Nashville, whatever on the menu, I play dumb. And I just ask the server, hey, can you tell me what's going on with this dish? Most of the time, the server has no clue. And then a lot of times they get the story completely wrong. And it's just really unfortunate. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. If you know that you have a dish from another culture, why not celebrate its origins and inform your diners? Because again, people want to know the backstory. They're interested in the backstory of their food. Another thing to think about when you're featuring dishes from another culture is the dangers of cultural appropriation. And for those of you who don't know about this, this is the idea when someone outside of a group essentially puts a dish on their menu. They may not acknowledge where it was from, or they're making it in a way that's not recognizable by the original culture. And quite a few people have gotten in trouble, especially on social media, for these things. So my suggestions, my advice for avoiding cultural appropriation is, one, when you get something from another culture, just acknowledge that you did that and give those people credit. Two, if it makes sense to compensate the originators, you should do so. And that's a case where, you've been in contact with them, you know where this is from, and you're in a position to do so. And then three, most importantly, is just make the food well. There's nothing worse than having something appropriated and then it's just whack. It's just nasty. I mean, that makes no sense at all. Other things that we could do in the hospitality industry is I think that we could use our restaurants to become a convener for having difficult conversations and engaging people. I'll give you a few examples. In Mississippi, there was something called Mission Mississippi, and this has been going on for 2 decades, where on designated days of the year, this organization has recruited restaurants to essentially have a steep discount for diners who are in interracial dining parties. So there's a code that's given. It's 2 + 2. And that dinner party has to be interracial in its composition. And then they get a 22% discount for those that are participating. And based on anecdotal evidence and also just articles on this, we see people making the attempt at least to form friendships across differing racial lines. And that's something that Mississippi has done. We could certainly do that in other parts of the country. So something to think about, some kind of incentive that will bring people together in your restaurant. Another thing to do is to have what I call a resident chef program, where maybe you invite a chef from another culinary tradition to maybe have a special event in your restaurant. Maybe it's something more engaged, but it's a way to highlight that other culture, maybe create a fusion meal that could somehow highlight both the cultures, the culinary cultures that you are celebrating in your restaurant, as well as the other person's restaurant. So I'm thinking it would be really interesting if, say, like an Italian restaurant paired with a soul food cook. And there's some there's some overlap there. One example is fried fish and spaghetti, which is a very popular thing, not only in parts of the South, not all the South, because I get a lot of haterade on social media when I talk about fried fish and spaghetti, but also gets love in the upper Midwest, places like Chicago, Detroit, and so there are more opportunities for collaboration. Another thing you could do is, if you don't have the resources or the ability to bring in a guest chef, why not find a cookbook from another culinary tradition and feature recipes of that culinary tradition on your menu, tell the story. And it's something, again, to engage people and start to get them to think outside of the confines of what their normal exposure is. And then I've also been thinking about this concept I call the welcome table. And the idea here is to have a structured meal program to engage people to deal with some issue that's a challenge to their community. So the first meal would be a potluck, and essentially the conveners, which would be those in the hospitality industry leaders or the owners of a restaurant or a hotel or whoever, would decide who's going to be part of this, bring those folks together. And then the idea is to just be a potluck, bring food from your culinary tradition, be in that space, build relationship. And after you've built relationship, then it's a matter of laying out the problem and the challenge and inviting people to be in this dialogue. After the invitation is extended, you're going to lose some people. Some people aren't interested in that, but hopefully you've chosen well, and these are people that want to engage. And so the second gathering is whoever's affected by that challenge, whatever it is, they have the floor and everybody else listens. And you make the food of the people affected by that challenge, right? So it's a way to show affinity and to show support for that group. And then the third meeting is a clapback. And so all the people that were involved in this effort who heard the problem addressed would say, this is what we heard, this is what we're processing, this is what we think we can do about it. And that would be straight comfort meal for that meeting. And then the fourth meeting would be an account of the journey thus far. Hopefully the people who have been in this journey have figured out things that they can do. And then there will be an invitation for more discussion. And again, you might not have everybody who wants to do that, but hopefully some will. And for the food story in that last meeting would be a fusion meal. So you would bring in elements of everybody who's been involved in that discussion to talk about, how to deal with that challenge and maybe how to continue to think creatively about the subject. Now, throughout all of these journeys, whatever you do, also you have to take account that this is very tough stuff. We're dealing with centuries of stuff in some issues, in some situations. And so we have to make sure that we have not only group care, but self-care for the people who endeavor to do these things. But given the divides in our country, this is a time for creativity. And people in the hospitality industry know what creativity is all about. You do it every day. You bring joy to so many people. And I think, again, because this is one of the few spaces left where we can come together, this is a challenge that we should not approach with fear, but we should approach with excitement and enthusiasm, and we can make a difference. And not only can we make a difference, but we can also do something that's good for the bottom line. So thank you for indulging me on this brainstorm. I hope you enjoy the rest of this event, and I appreciate you. Much love to you all. Peace.
Hi, everybody. Okay, we're almost done. So I'm Dana Falk-Query. I'm from Big Red F Restaurant Group, and I have the immense pleasure of introducing Hosea and Lauren Rosenberg. Before I do that, I just wanted to give a quick little kind of shout out or call to action. Policy, public policy, advocacy. I think we all realized during the pandemic that it's more important than ever for us as a restaurant industry to be involved in our local, regional, and national government. And so I would just say and encourage everybody to just keep that up. We made some great strides during the pandemic, and that work is still happening. So thank you. That's my little shout out. And now for my long intro. Chef Hosea and Lauren are the co-founders of Black Belly Butcher, and Santo in Boulder, and are the proud founders of the nonprofit organization Sophie's Neighborhood. In 2009, after an already celebrated career, Hosea won Top Chef Season 5 and was later recognized as business owner inspiring the entrepreneurial spirit of the nation by the U.S. Small Business Administration. He went on to open Black Belly Catering in 2012, followed by the award-winning Black Belly Restaurant in 2014, Black Belly Butcher in 2016, and Santo, inspired by his native roots in Taos, New Mexico in 2017. Lauren spent 14 years in advertising and media in New York City, working with brands including Microsoft, Campbell Soup, Ferrero Rocher, I nailed that, I had to look up how to say that, Sports Illustrated, Ski Magazine, and Cooking Light, before attending a management program at the Institute of Culinary Education and shifting into the restaurant industry. Prior to joining Hosea at Black Belly in 2016, she was the PR director for Cholon and Gather in Denver. In March of 2020, upon learning of their young daughter Sophie's devastating rare disease diagnosis, Lauren and Hosea founded Sophie's Neighborhood, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to fundraising for research into the development of an effective treatment or cure for an ultra-rare genetic disorder, multicentric carpotarsal osteolosis, or known as MCTO. They are now catalysts for groundbreaking scientific research that will produce life-changing therapeutics. Little Sophie Rosenberg turns 5 years old in May and is currently obsessed with wearing sleeveless dresses, no matter the weather, she told me that last night, and dancing like a wild woman, singing at the top of her lungs. Following December's devastating urban firestorm in Louisville and Superior, Hosea and Lauren went to work and turned the parking lot of Black Belly into a community relief center, collecting and distributing food, clothing, household goods, and much more to hundreds of people affected by the fires. It's an honor and a privilege to introduce them today. Please give them an EatDenver welcome to Lauren and Hosea.
Good morning. I think it's still morning. Hello, everybody, and thanks for having us, and thanks for sticking around. Patty, I agree with you wherever you went that you should have been last. She's arguably the best writer in the room, and I'm probably the worst writer in the room, but here we are. We're here to tell our story and, just share a little slice of our life right now.
Thank you. It's really good to see everyone. It's been a while. The last couple of years, as we all know, have been a little brutal, and I'm so glad that we're all here. We're standing. That says a lot. It took us a moment of self-reflection to really try to deliver what we were asked to talk to you all about, that Katie asked us to speak about. How could we possibly keep our focus and our positivity and optimism through a lot of hardship? And we had to think about that. How's that possible? And our title actually comes from something that we think applies to everyday life, crisis mode or not. Our circumstances, they just continue to change and they feel harder as we get older. But if we think about how we could possibly take the power back and rethink and reset our expectations, this might help us be better prepared moving forward for whatever comes our way. So rethink, reset, repeat, and then the most important part that we would love you to take home with you is that the suffering part is optional. It really is. We feel it sometimes, but then we can take that power back. And something that was pretty notable in my career, that I was able to apply this line of thinking to was what I wanted out of my life. And so I had been working for a little more than a decade in a business, climbing a ladder, but then watching the landscape of my industry sort of almost start to collapse around me. This was when I was working in media companies and for magazine companies, and we were really trying to figure out how we were going to work our way into the future. And the companies I was working for, we were struggling. We were trying, but we kept having to rethink how this was working and kind of keep up, really. And as me personally, as I started to try to spend a lot of time thinking about this, my mind started drifting towards a completely different industry. I was spending a lot of time in New York, having meetings in amazing restaurants, as we know, and I started to think, wow, this industry seems really interesting to me. Maybe I could apply my skills in marketing to this. And it was really scary. I was around 30, and I decided to make this huge change and go into a completely different industry. And it was the first time in my career that I said, it's okay. I'm not going to be scared. I'm just going to do it because it feels right, and it's something that can help fulfill my life. And so that helped me make this transition into the food and beverage industry, which has no problems, of course. So going back to the last 2 years, which obviously is the most relevant to all of us, we and the world struggled almost constantly. We've all weathered so many storms. As Dana shared with all of you, for our family, it was our world was rocked. We were totally rocked because not only in that week of March when we realized what was happening around us, that our livelihood and our business and the people that we love and our restaurant families everything was in question because of the coming pandemic. Minutes before going into a meeting actually to deliver some information to our teams and talk about layoffs and lockdown, Hosea and I received a phone call from our daughter's doctor that told us her diagnosis. We were told that she had something really rare that had never been understood, that they had never heard of, and that over time she would become progressively more crippled, and that she would probably experience kidney failure. And just minutes later, we had to walk into a meeting and talk about layoffs and lockdown and how we were going to handle that. So that felt like the floor was falling beneath us, and that everything had all of a sudden become so terrible that our livelihood and our daughter's life were all in peril at the same time. And this is sort of where we had to hold on to something. And I hung on to this notion, actually this statement that I read in the Book of Joy, which we all really need to read. And this was written by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu on the Dalai Lama's 80th birthday to really connect with the understanding of joy, because life is going to continue to throw stinking messes at you, but you can actually take the power back and decide that no dark fate will determine the future. We can do that. And each day and each moment, we are able to create and recreate our lives. And this is the very power that we yield. And so because our kid is almost 5 and we connect mostly with animated movies, we decided we were going to pull our destiny cap off the wall and leave our everything is good cap. And we were going to fight this. And what we did was we formed our nonprofit. And we really had no business doing this. We had no idea how to do this. But we did it because we used this fear as motivation. And then this is the clincher. The thing that helped us do it was you. We could not have done this without every single person in this room. So thank you. Now I'm going to turn it to Hosea.
All right. You can change the next slide. So as Lauren said, this rocked our world. Everything changed for us in an instant. We all have been through a lot of hell in the last 2 years, but for us it was kind of a 1-2 punch, and we either had to recede and just give up and just cry ourselves to death, or we were going to turn it around and rethink everything about our lives, about who we are, about what we stand for, about what we're capable of doing. So it started with this whole idea of just rethinking. We were already rethinking the restaurants, we were rethinking our career, our livelihood, but we had to rethink our core values as people. So it started internally, and it was just a gut instinct. Like, we had to just kind of get tough real quick and just start facing these things. We're both fighters, we're both entrepreneurs, we're not afraid of challenge, we're not necessarily brave, we're just ready to face things. So we had to rethink all the things we stand for, what we're gonna do, and to me it distilled all the way down to love versus fear. We were scared, obviously. There's a lot of fear in the world. There's a lot of things to be worried about. But if you lean into the love and know that, you look into this little girl's eyes, you look into your families and your work co-workers' faces, there's a lot of love there. There's a lot of love in this room. We're going to lean into that and shed the fear and just kind of march forward and figure things out as we go. My gut has always taken me a lot of places. It's always usually led me in the right place. So you kind of lean into this love, and you also lean into hope over anger. There was a lot for us to be frustrated about and worried about, but instead we kind of looked the other way and said, we can deal with this. We're not the only people with problems. We've got a lot going for us. We've got this amazing community, and it seems like the more we put out there, the more comes back to us in spades. I have a physics degree. I also have my career, well, I guess I'm a career changer. I never really followed my degree into a career, but you learn in physics about constructive interference or destructive interference, and that's the idea that you can put this noise to either amplify the noise that's already there, or you can put this noise to kind of decrease that noise. It's like when they teach you to throw all the bottles in the recycling container. If you scream loud while you're doing it, it doesn't make your ears ring. Well, for us, it's all about sharing the love, spreading the love, and putting positivity into our everyday, and suddenly we start seeing all these positive things come back. We had a lot of almost miracles happen in that first few months, just with people we connected with, the help that was offered, the information that we were given, and it gave us a lot of hope and love to kind of move forward into this absolutely new chapter, almost a new book in our life. So, we had to face all our personal challenges and everything that we're going through as a family. But we also had to face all these work challenges, and I don't have to explain to anybody in this room how hard these last 2 years have been. But we, again, distilled it all down to what really matters for us as operators and owners of restaurants. And again, it boils down to that love. We want to take care of our people, the ones that we chose to keep around, the ones that chose to come back to us when we could start reopening and doing more work. And we had started implementing some wellness programs before the pandemic. We had some programs we had kind of started putting in place, and I gotta say, this person next to me was a catalyst for a lot of that, because when I was single and just kind of making my way up, I cared more about just the food and the ratings and the food cost and the making sure we're profitable. And now it's like, hey, you got to take care of these people. And so once this pandemic happened and we reset everything, it became so much more about mental health. Everybody in our company can call a hotline and get free mental health counseling as often and as regularly as they need it. We have a lot of programs for physical wellness, mental wellness, time off. We're not okay. Not everybody's okay, but we're here for you. And if we share that love and we kind of give that feedback, we're not here to be tough with everybody. We're still running businesses. We still got to make good food. We still got to care about the customers, but we don't necessarily care as much about our rankings and our ratings and the reviews and these things. This is all part of the game, but we're taking care of our people first, and we hope that resonates with the public and that brings more people into our doors rather than, oh, I read this Yelp review. We don't really give a shit about that right now. We care about the people and our health and what we're doing internally inside those walls and inside our hearts, and that's where we get our power. Down here at the bottom is something I like to say. You can, I didn't say this first. I'm not actually sure whose quote that is, but you can rule your kingdom through love or through fear. We're choosing love. We're choosing not to be hard and ridiculing people and all those kind of old school chef mentality things that I was kind of brought up in the industry doing. It's more like, all right, let's work on this together. Let's figure this out. There's always a way to make it better. There's always a way to make it work. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to make it work.
So as Hosea was saying, we're really putting love first and using that as sort of the guiding principle to everything, and it feels like we know it is coming right back to us, and it's pretty amazing. And so just that idea, again, of the fact that pain is going to be inevitable in everyone's lives in so many different ways, but that suffering piece is kind of optional, and that we can control our reactions and put our hopes into action. And so it's really important to me that we take this time to thank all of you again, because since the day that we went public with our news about our daughter and our family situation, it has been just mind-blowing what has come to us, that the people in this community, in this restaurant community, have come to us unsolicited with ways to help or help create contribution opportunities among their own guests. Just to mention a couple that are sort of more recent, if you guys were aware of Chef Kelly Whitaker's pop-up with Brian Lockwood up in Boulder at Basta, they came to us and we sat down and had coffee, and I'll never forget this moment where they just said, we're doing this and we're going to use this as a platform for Sophie's Neighborhood. That's the name of our organization here, and that was just incredible. So between having another outlet for amplification within Boulder and within the Denver area, and then more contributions coming to our efforts, that was incredible. To this day, Locale up in Boulder has a continuous effort with their kids menu where they provide contributions through all of those sales as well. Chef Tajahi Cook started his Supper Club dinner series this past summer. Again, just came to us and said, this is all dedicated to Sophie's Neighborhood. And it was just mind-blowing because we have been in this moment of time these last 2 years trying to just figure out how to make it all work and to make ends meet and pay rent and take care of our people, but yet to be able to reach out and give back to a cause so important to us will mean the world to us forever. And so we could never properly thank you. And, I have to say I've had this moment so many times going through this experience because, of course, as a parent, this is the worst thing that I could possibly imagine. But it just kind of reminds me that when these circumstances that seem impossible come across you in life, you never know who you're going to meet because of it. You never know what you're going to learn or the lives that you're going to be able to change because of it, and how your life might be enriched had that circumstance never happened. So I encourage everyone to just take that power and put positivity back into the world. And Hosea and I are not motivational speakers. We don't have the answers. We're certainly not perfect, but we're just sharing our experience with everyone, and we hope it's interesting and useful, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you all.
I can't think of a better way to end this morning, so I will just thank the speakers one more time for making, we spent hours crafting these talks, and they have put so much time into what happens this morning. So thank you for your time this morning and leading up to this. I want to thank our event sponsors again, all of you for coming here in person. Congratulations on keeping your attention span. We lost maybe a third of us throughout this. I was worried. I was wondering if anyone can actually sit still for 2 hours anymore, but congrats, you guys did it. It was so great to see everyone, and a couple quick save the dates. The Big Eat this year is scheduled for July 28th, Thursday, 6 to 9 p.m. That'll be our big comeback after 3 years, and it will be the 10th Big Eat that we've ever thrown. Super excited at the Performing Arts Complex again, and then Harvest Week is scheduled for October 2nd through 7th at Ironton Distillery again. So mark your calendars, and it was so wonderful to see everyone this morning, and let's all put our destiny caps on and go and just make some magic happen this Wednesday. Thank you all.